Hello dear students, this is my next video after the chapter number 14 by St. Coleridge, in which we saw that how St. Coleridge described a poem, a poetry and the poet. In the same way we are going to start this second last topic of our S4, that is Introduction of Literary Criticism. This piece of writing is actually a whole paper written by Helen Louise Gardner. She was born in 1908 and died in 1986. And we will see that how criticism in the later periods or the phases of 20th century went through many different changes, and then it did not remain only the traditional work of traditional criticism only. So I think with the during the course of this lecture you might be very clearly understanding the whole idea of this paper, The Scepter and the Torch by Helen Louise Gardner. See, this chapter or the paper or essay we can call The Scepter and the Torch, it was actually a talk she delivered in 1953, and the collection of all the topics in that talk she titled The Profession of a Critic in 1953. And then later on she decided to publish all her lectures, all her talks in a book form, and that book was titled as The Business of Criticism in 1959. So this is the background information of the knowledge of this essay. That first this essay was actually a speech, a talk that she delivered in the series of speech which she entitled as The Profession of a Critic, and it was done in 1953. Then later on she published all her speech, all her talks in a book form, and both the things changed. Now it is a book and the title is Business of Criticism in 1959. Now let's see about something about the critic Helen Louise Gardner. Key features of Gardner's criticism. We will see that what are the key features of Helen Gardner's criticism, what school she belongs to, what are her ideologies, what type of criticism she supported, she was in support of or she championed. So let's see the key features of Gardner's criticism. See, her critical methodology included the work's historical context, the personal habits of the author, and the relationship of the text to the time period. See, her criticism is very much different than the criticism of new critics. New critics, you know very well, were in support of textual study. They did not support, they did not like any contextual information, contextual knowledge of the work. They just concentrated, they just wanted to study the text only by dropping all the contexts of that text. But Helen Gardner did not like this idea. She was in support of the historical context of the work. She was in support of biographical context of the work, as well as the other relationship of a work to understand that work. That's why we can say that she belonged to the new criticism period, but she was not a new critic. She opposed some ideas of new critics, and we will see in later parts of our lecture that how she herself confesses, she herself accepts that I am one of the new critics, but I want something changed, something different. So this is her first key feature, that she was in support of, she included the work's historical context, the personal habits of the author, and the relationship of the text to the time period. Now the second key feature is Gardner, it is said, belonged to no school of literary criticism. She did not wanted. She did not want to be called or to be compartmentalized in any particular school of thought or of a school of literary criticism. That's why we can say that she did not belong to any school of literary criticism. She did not call herself a new critic or traditional critic or psychological critic or any sociological critic, Marxist critic. She did not give any name to herself. Now the third key feature, so the second key feature is that she did not belong to any school of literary criticism. Then she was critical of the new criticism and its insistence on multiple interpretations. Gardner disavowed the rejection of determinate meanings in texts, insisting that despite texts being open to multiple interpretations, there is still intentional communication for readers to try to understand. See, she was critical of the new criticism, means that she criticized the ideologies, the methodologies of new criticism and new critics also, and its insistence on multiple interpretations. See, new critics interpreted a text in a very different ways. They interpreted in a very unique way, means that they did not like any biographical information, any sociological information, any historical information of the work. They just studied work as a text only. So Gardner disavowed the rejection of determinate meanings in text. She said that you cannot get any particular or any determinate meaning, any fixed meaning in a work. How can you get a fixed meaning in a text by dropping its context? So she disavowed means that she rejected the idea, insisting that despite texts being open to multiple interpretations, she believed that no doubt a work, a text is open to multiple interpretations. There is still intentional communication for readers to try to understand. But you see, she said that whatever multiple interpretations can be there in a work, but still there is an intention or intentional communication, means that the writer has a particular intention, particular intent that he wants to convey, that he wants to impart to his readers. So how will we understand that intention? How will we get that intentional communication properly? So this is the question actually, and she raised this question, and the whole essay, the whole book, the whole paper is based on this contention of her, that she did not like the idea of new critics dropping all the contexts and studying the text only, or studying verbal uh, text only. Now, the one more key feature of Gardner's criticism, she opposed the then current trend of literary criticism to over interpreting texts and using technical jargon. See, means new critics were day by day doing post-mortem of the work. They were very dry, in a very dry manner. They were creating new terminologies, new jargons, new words to provide the different interpretations, different meanings of the work, which Helen Gardner did not like. She did not like this idea that for interpreting or for understanding a work, you are just creating technical jargons, you are and over interpreting the texts. Now the last key feature of her criticism is with regard to the function of a critic. She stated that it is to shine a torch and not wield a scepter, meaning that the function of a critic is to illuminate rather than attack. See, means the title of the essay is actually a very symbolic one. It is derived from Dr. Samuel Johnson's allegory, in which he very finely, very beautifully described the function, the work of a critic. Here she is repeating that work of a critic. She says that it is to shine a torch, means a critic's task is just to shine a torch on a work, not to weld, not to use, not to uh, rule the work. No, means not to pass judgment like a ruler on a work, because work doesn't belong to a critic. Work belongs to a writer. Work belongs to a poet, no, some creator. So critics' task is just to shine a torch, just to illuminate the work, not to pass a particular judgment and then finally decide whether the work is right or wrong or correct or incorrect or good or bad. So if you are doing that thing, it means you are wielding a scepter. You are using ruler's authority to pass your judgment. So this thing she did not like. She wanted uh, torch as the symbol of a critic, not the scepter. Scepter means a small club, a small stuff, which is the sign of authority, which is the sign of rule, which is the sign of monarchy, which is the sign of sovereignty. So she rejects the symbol of scepter and accepts the symbol of torch. So meaning that the function of a critic is to illuminate rather than attack. So you see, those who use scepter, they attack the work, they pass their judgments on the work, and those who illuminate the work, they definitely they try to explain the work very well. This is the main function of the critic, that she justifies, that she tries to prove correct or right in this essay. Let's see now. See, now if I have cleared all the main hereabouts of the work, it's a background information that how this essay was basically a speech in 1953 that she delivered in a university, and then later on this speech became a whole essay paper and was published in a book, The Business of a Critic, in 1959. Now you see, this is, and in the book this essay was kept on the first position, in the first number. The chapter number 1 is the scepter and the torch that we are going to study now. Now I explain to you the parts of this essay, means how many parts this essay is based on. So I think the whole essay is based on 8 parts. uh, Means basically there are only 7 parts, but one more part I have added, that is conclusion part. So if you read the original work which is available, you can easily download, you can google the work by giving the command the scepter and the torch pdf. So I think you very easily you will get the pdf copy of the whole essay, original essay, and you go through that essay, you read that essay. It is really a very mind blowing. It is having very new ideas, creative ideas about uh, the new criticism as well as the criticism of Helen Gardner. So now let's see the parts of this whole essay. The first part is called criticism is a profession or professionalized. She discusses this aspect of criticism, that today, means in the second half of the 20th century, criticism, or even in the first half of the 20th century, criticism is fully a professionalized field now. Means nowadays people are writing their criticism by taking some money as a profession. Then second part deals with critical activities, tasks of a critic. She discusses the different tasks of a critic throughout the centuries, from the beginning till today. Means how many different tasks, or what are the basic tasks, or which one is the most important task of a critic. And then in the third section, she deals with the allegory of Johnson. Means this title of the essay. Means where did she get the idea of the title from? So the idea came from the allegory of Johnson, which is the title of our essay also. Then next, the fourth part is works of art as historical objects. Then she starts to justify, or starts to give her ideas about a work, that you cannot understand a work until you understand its background, its context, that is historical. Means a work of art is an historical object. Then the fifth part is extra historical life of a text. She says that our work of art is no doubt historical, but we it also remains with us. So in this way, it is extra historical life of a text. Means a work of art or literary work or a text is not only historical completely, but it has some extra historical life also, which is relevant to all the present times. Means for example, you see the work of Shakespeare, which is historical chronologically, but even today it is connected to our lives. It is having some message, having some lesson, having some good qualities for we human beings. So we can say that extra historical life of a text. Then individuality of the text. Then she discusses, just like the new critic, that every text is like an individual. It is unique. It is one of its own kind. So she, in the sixth part, discusses that thing. Then the last section, in which she discusses primary concern for the text itself. Here means in the seventh section, she clears her point. She clears her stand that she is also one of the new critics. She is not against them. She is not rival to them, or she is not going against their ideas, but she is one of them. But only some addition or some new aspects she wants to add into new criticism. And then we will see the conclusion, means what does she say finally about this essay or about her criticism in this essay. So in this first part I stop my video here. In the next part we will start from the very beginning of the essay, and one by one we will cover all the main points or all the main parts of the essay. Thank you very much.